All right, buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep today, and you know what that means. You wanted to understand how public opinion really works. So we're going all the way back to 1928 with Edward Bernays and his book Propaganda.
Ah, yes, Bernays, a fascinating figure. I know that word propaganda might sound a little, well, intense.
A bit ominous, maybe.
Yeah, ominous, but really think of it as the OG of public relations, Bernays, was figuring out how to influence beliefs way before the internet.
Which just blows my mind. I mean, this guy's working with telegraphs, we're dealing with algorithms on our phones, but
Right, totally different worlds.
but those core ideas, those are timeless, right? That's what we're after.
Absolutely. And Bernays, he kicks things off with this concept of invisible governance groups,
Yeah.
that shape what we think without us even realizing it.
Okay, hold on. So not like the Illuminati controlling the world through pizza toppings.
Uh-huh, not quite.
Yeah.
It's more subtle than that. Think about it. You're part of all sorts of groups, right? Professional organizations, online forums, maybe a fan club for, I don't know, antique typewriters.
You're speaking my language now.
Bernays' point is that each of these groups, even the pickle packers of the world, they all influence how we see things.
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's like this constant pressure to kind of conform to the group's opinion.
Exactly. Like you start liking that band all your friends are into, even if you weren't that keen at first.
Oh, 100%. Been there, done that.
And Bernays argued that this is actually, well, essential in this crazy complex world we live in. We simply can't be experts on every single issue before forming an opinion.
Right, imagine having to research every toothpaste brand before picking one up at the store. Forget it.
Exactly. So we rely on these invisible governments, these groups, to kind of simplify things for us. Filter the information, give us some pre-digested options. Suddenly, choosing feels easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it also makes you wonder how much of our thinking is really our own then?
That's the question Bernays wants us to ask. And he takes it even further, arguing that skilled communicators, she called them public relations counsel, can actually create situations that nudge public opinion.
Hold up, create situations. That sounds a bit manipulative, doesn't it?
It can be, but Bernays, he saw it as more of a subtle art, like a
Yeah.
magician. You're so focused on the rabbit popping out of a hat, you miss the sleight of hand.
Okay, I need an example. What kind of situation are we talking about here?
Well, Bernays himself was a master at this. Back when velvet was going out of fashion, he helped orchestrate a comeback.
A velvet comeback? How do you even?
By convincing top Parisian fashion houses to feature it, and American buyers, they see velvet on the runway, magazines pick it up, boom, velvet chic again.
Wow, that's like serious puppet mastery. So he created this whole artificial demand by making velvet seem trendy.
Precisely. It wasn't about forcing velvet on anyone, but subtly shaping the environment so people felt like they were choosing it themselves.
Okay, that's clever, but also kind of creepy. Now I'm side-eyeing every viral trend I see online.
Interesting. Let's hold on to that thought because Bernays wasn't just about tactics. He was really interested in the why behind our choices.
Okay, I love those aha moments, spill the beans.
Well, Bernays believed that we often fool ourselves about our real motivations. He uses the example of buying a fancy car. You might say it's about horsepower or features, but...
But deep down, it's about impressing the Joneses.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, guilty as charged.
Right. And Bernays, he argued that understanding these hidden desires, these underlying psychological triggers, that's the key to truly understanding public opinion.
So it's like peeling back the layers, getting to the core of why people believe what they believe, even if they don't realize it themselves.
Exactly. And once you grasp that, you can start to see how these public relations council, they can kind of shape those beliefs.
Well, they become like translators, helping businesses and organizations speak the language of the people.
Yes. Connect with those deeper desires and present themselves in a way that resonates.
So less about manipulation and more about, alignment.
That was Bernays' ideal. He used the example of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Back then, they were seen pretty negatively.
Insurance companies, not exactly known for their popularity.
But they highlighted their public health efforts, their role as partners in people's well-being, and shifted that perception.
So instead of the Grim Reaper, they became like the friendly neighborhood insurance agent.
You got it. And that change wasn't just about a marketing campaign. It came from real actions, real priorities.
That's an important point. Authenticity. It sounds like Bernays believed in walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Absolutely. You can't just slap on a smile and expect everyone to believe you. People can tell when they're being spun a yarn.
They could back then. I'm sure they can now, too.
Uh-huh.
But then, if people are so good at sniffing out BS, how do these created circumstances even work?
That is the million-dollar question. And it gets even trickier when you add politics to the mix. Bernays was adamant that politicians needed to step up their game.
No more baby kissing and flag waving.
Well, maybe not just that.
Mm.
He envisioned them as master storytellers, crafting narratives that resonated with the public.
So instead of just listing facts and figures, they need to connect on an emotional level.
Exactly. He used the example of a politician campaigning on a low-tariff platform instead of just listing the benefits.
He'd show voters the real-world impact. Maybe take them to a factory hit hard by import taxes.
Now you're getting it. Make
Yeah.
it real, tangible, and way more persuasive.
Wow, we've covered a lot. Invisible governments, created circumstances, the psychology of persuasion, and now politics. And I feel like we're just getting started.
Oh, we are just scratching the surface. But maybe it's time for a breather before we dive even deeper.
I think you're right. My brain needs a moment to process all of this before we go further. All right, phew, give me a second to catch my breath here. That was a lot to take in, all these ideas from, almost 100 years ago. But now I'm even more curious, do these concepts even still apply today? I mean, it's a whole different world now.
That's the thing. They might be even more relevant now in the age of, the internet and social media. It's wild, right?
It really is. I mean, he was talking about the group mind, emotions, the influence of leaders. All that is like social media in a nutshell.
It's uncanny, for sure. And those algorithms we talked about, remember? Designed to play on those very things. You get fed content that reinforces what you already believe, connects you with people who think like you. Next thing you know, you're in an echo chamber.
So those invisible governments, they're still pulling strings, but now it's behind the scenes online.
Kind of, yeah. But don't forget, we have a say in all this. We choose which groups we join, who we follow, what news we consume.
So it's about being aware, being critical, not just blindly accepting everything you see online.
You got it. Bernays, he believed that understanding all this, it actually empowers people to be more discerning, to spot manipulation.
So it's like a self-defense class, but for the internet. Sign me up.
Exactly. And remember, these techniques, they're not always used for bad, They can promote positive change, too. Public health, education, bridging divides between groups.
Like that insurance company example, right? Rebranding themselves as partners in public health.
Precisely. A win-win for them and the public. And that idea of businesses being more transparent, emphasizing shared values, that's huge now.
Yeah, like with all the talk about corporate social responsibility and purpose-driven brands, it's not just about profit anymore.
Right. Companies need to be good citizens and communicate that effectively. Which brings us back to those public relations councils, bridging that gap between what a company does and how it's perceived.
You can do all the good in the world, but if nobody knows about it. What's the point?
Exactly. And today, information travels at warp speed, reputations can be ruined instantly, so that role is even more vital.
Speaking of speed, can you imagine what Bernays would think of today's world? Back then, it took weeks for an idea to spread. Now it's minutes.
It's true. And that speed cuts both ways, right? It
Yeah.
can fuel positive movements, but also spread misinformation like wildfire.
Ugh, tell me about it. It's like a digital game of telephone gone wrong.
And that's why Bernays' focus on truth and accuracy is even more critical. Effective persuasion has to be based on reality, not spin.
So it's not enough to just be convincing. You have to be truthful, too. And that's especially important in politics, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
a cutthroat world, but Bernays believed that ultimately trust and credibility win out.
Like you can't fool all the people all the time.
Exactly. And with so much information flying around these days, it's harder than ever to pull the wool over people's eyes.
So where does that leave us? What does it all mean for democracy in this crazy digital age?
I think it means we have to be even more alert, more critical, more involved in the conversation.
Not just sitting back and letting things happen, but being active participants.
Exactly. Become more like citizen journalists. Fact check, form your own opinions, talk to people, even those you disagree with.
It's about holding those in power accountable, but also ourselves, right?
Absolutely. Being mindful of what we share, what we say, because a healthy democracy, it needs informed and engaged citizens.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, we've covered a ton in this part. Invisible governments online, how quickly information spreads, the importance of truth and ethics. I'm sensing a theme here.
There's definitely a thread running through all of this.
And I have a feeling it's only going to get more tangled as we explore how all this plays out in the modern political landscape. But first, remember that question we left hanging about modern-day created circumstances.
Ah, yes. Those sneaky little ways our perceptions are being shaped.
Bernays had his velvet, but what about today? Any examples that spring to mind?
Oh, tons. Look at how products are marketed online, all those perfect images, aspirational lifestyles, or how news is framed, appealing to emotions rather than presenting a balanced view.
It's like it's woven into the fabric of our online experience, harder to spot.
Precisely. And Bernays would say recognizing it is the first step to becoming more conscious, more critical.
My mind is officially blown. Every time I'm online now, I'll be on the lookout for those created circumstances.
That's the spirit. Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand, the more we can resist those nudges and make our own choices.
Well said. Buckle up, deep divers, because next, we're tackling the big one. How do Bernays' ideas play out in today's political arena? And what does it all mean for the future of democracy? Get ready. It's going to be a wild ride. Welcome back, deep divers. We are in the final stretch now of our exploration of Edward Bernays' propaganda, and things are about to get really interesting. We're going to turn our attention to the world of politics.
You know, it's almost like Bernays had a crystal ball or something. His insights from almost a century ago, they're so relevant when we look at today's political landscape.
Right, like he was talking about how politicians need to be, more than just figureheads. Like they need to be these skilled communicators, people who can connect on an emotional level and shape the public's perceptions. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing today?
Absolutely. He called for this shift from old-fashioned campaigning to more sophisticated techniques of persuasion. And that's exactly what we're seeing playing out, especially in the digital age.
It's true. Think about it. Social media, it's become this battleground for political messaging. With campaigns trying to create these perfect online personas, using like every trick in the book to get more followers, influence voters.
It's definitely a far cry from those old-school whistle-stop tours and town hall meetings.
Oh, for sure. But even those old school tactics, they've gotten a digital makeover.
Exactly. Now you see politicians using live streams and viral videos and targeted advertising to reach these huge audiences and create these super memorable moments that are going to stick in people's minds.
It's like they're constantly trying to create those created circumstances that Bernays was talking about, like those events that seem spontaneous but are actually carefully orchestrated.
You got it. And it's not just about getting elected either. Bernays, he argued that governing effectively, well, that requires a deep understanding of what the public thinks and feels, and honestly, the ability to shape those opinions so that they align with what the government wants to do.
It's pretty intense when you think about it like that. He even went as far as suggesting that governments should have get this, a Secretary of Public Relations, someone to manage communication and build trust with the public.
Can you imagine that? A cabinet-level position just for making sure the government is communicating effectively with its citizens?
It's an interesting thought, but I'm sure a lot of people will be a little uncomfortable with that idea. Where do you draw the line between persuasion and manipulation, right? Between shaping opinions and respecting individual freedom?
It's definitely a tricky balance, and that's why Bernays' emphasis on ethics is so important. He always said that persuasion that works, it has to be rooted in truth, accuracy, and really a genuine concern for the public good.
So it's not enough to just be persuasive. You got to be truthful and ethical too, but how do you make sure that happens, especially in politics when things can get so, heated and competitive?
Well, Bernays, he argued that successful persuasion, it always boils down to trust and credibility, not deception or force.
It's like that saying, right? You can fool some of the people all of the time.
And all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time.
Exactly. And in today's world, with information moving so fast, it's even harder to keep up a facade, to deceive people for very long. So where does all of this leave us? What does it mean for the future of democracy, especially now?
I think it means that we as citizens, we have to be even more vigilant. We have to be very careful about being manipulated, be super picky about the information we consume, and, more active in participating in public discussions.
So we can't just sit back and be passive observers.
I don't quite.
We got to get in there, right? But how do we do that effectively? There's so much noise out there.
It's a good question. I think we almost have to become like citizen journalists, fact check everything, form our own opinions, and then have conversations with other people, even those who see things differently.
We have to hold people in power accountable for what they say and do, right?
Oh, absolutely. But it's also about holding ourselves accountable, too. The information we're spreading, the opinions we're expressing. Because a healthy democracy, it needs informed citizens who can critically evaluate things and make thoughtful choices.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Bernays' propaganda, what's the big takeaway? What do you really hope people will remember about all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway from Bernays is this. The fight for public opinion, it never ends. It's constantly evolving, and it's happening everywhere, from government to corporations to the online world, and we all have a part to play in that. We have to be aware, be informed, and stay engaged.
Because the future depends on it, right?
Exactly.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep shaping the world around you.